Martin Fitzwater has changed his life for the better. Before he was a pro show winner, before he started gaining these various accolades, a chain of events occurred, and it all began when Martin lost his sponsorship, dropping from the roster of Axe and Sledge. That sentence right there sounds insane because Seth Feroce himself is a chill-ass dude. His person, his character has never really been controversial, and he's a pretty lenient person by all accounts. So for him to take the decision to drop Martin, the offense must have been serious. And serious it was, because in a post by Guy Sister Nino, he was posing alongside Martin, where they were showing their side leg. After Guy Sister Nino posted, comments began to flood in, and eventually Nick Walker commented on the post saying, quote, "Guy's legs are bigger," end quote. And I don't think that was a serious jab at Martin. I think it was just a boys being boys situation. But Martin didn't take it that way. Martin commented back by saying, quote, "At least I won't throw a fucking claw and die, Nightcrawler Nick," end quote. And after that comment was typed and published, it was the point where Martin began to spiral downwards. He rightfully received a lot of backlash for that specific comment. But to Martin's credit, he would eventually go on to apologize. But if you know anything about public figures, then you know an apology video is never really a good look because they usually incite controversy. And controversial Martin was at the time. This all happened in 2022. And 2022 was supposed to be the breakout year for Martin, since he was set to compete at the Texas Pro. But as we know now, it wasn't. Andrew Jacked came onto the scene, and he was the talk of the town. Martin actually placed behind him in Texas and took second. And that was devastating to Martin because he had something to prove. After the Nick Walker comments, the backlash, the hate was still overcast over Martin. And perhaps if he could just get this win, then the tide would turn into his favor. But it didn't. And he didn't take too well to the loss at the Texas Pro. But this was just round one for Andrew and Martin Fitzwater, since they were set to compete again at the Arnold UK. And that's when people began to speculate. Maybe he's just going to drop out of the Arnold UK and focus on the Olympia. During the time between the Texas Pro and the UK Pro, Martin actually called out Andrew about being afraid to compete in the Arnold UK. Andrew was relayed this information by different sources, and he felt disrespected. He would even go as far as to challenge Martin to a fight, prompting Martin to immediately back down and retract those comments. When the actual show happened, Martin placed fourth, while Andrew won again. And while that wasn't Andrew's best showing, he still won the competition over Martin. During the show itself, Martin didn't look as comfortable as he did in the Texas Pro, and it was noticeable. His confidence was indeed declining, and his body was reflecting that. Again, this was supposed to be the breakout year for Martin, but it ended up being the opposite. Here was this dude with aspirations to win his first pro show and to then go on to the MrOlympia competition, where he would be able to make a name for himself. But those opportunities were no longer on the table. Martin decided from there to go back to the drawing board, and he would take a break from competing, although not before. He privately called Andrew Jacked a bag of chocolate milk in a screenshot posted on his close friend's story function on Instagram. This picture in particular wasn't meant for the public, but one of the people who Martin considered his close friends backstabbed him and leaked the screenshot into the public eye. And this further added to the controversy that was Martin Fitzwater at the time. The backlash with Nick Walker, the sore loser demeanor after the shows he had participated in, and this comment made the public turn against Martin Fitzwater. They didn't really like the guy, and people began to talk a bunch of shit about Martin. And did he merit all those comments directed towards him? Well, it just depends. See, what people don't realize is that Martin, he's a young guy. I don't want to defend what he said or what had occurred, because those things are out there. He can never take those things back. Yes, he could apologize for them, but there was clearly a pattern occurring. He was going from one controversy to the other, making him spiral even further than he already was. So if we lay things out and really ask ourselves, did he stand by the words he said during his apology? At the time, I would have said no because he was chronically putting himself in situations that got him in trouble. But now that we're in 2024 and we have hindsight, I do believe he was actually remorseful about what he said and the things he did during that time. After those notable points in Martin's timeline, he never really made headlines and he remained low-key. But unlike most people, he didn't get deterred or depressed about everything that had occurred. Instead of continuing to spiral, he caught himself and he set out on a path to improve. He went on to do therapy, which is hard for anyone to do. Self-reflection and the want to change does not come easy to anyone. Still, he took time out of his day to try to improve, to not be the same, to not remain as he is. Some would say that those things are the best things that had ever happened to him because it allowed him to come to this turning point, an opportunity to revamp his life. Finally, Martin seemed to be on the right path, a path where he didn't surrender to his superficial emotions. Therapy, however, wasn't his crutch. His crutch was the support system of people that surrounded Martin and supported him all the while. The people behind the scenes are what made all the difference in the world to Martin. Seemingly, his support system dwindled because he lost his coach and he lost a lot of his fan base. But during that downfall, the people who still cared remained or were added to reinforce his social binding. He got a new coach, Boss of Outlaw. His girlfriend came into the equation and supported him. And instead of creating problems for his lifestyle, she became a great asset to the bodybuilder that he is today. I think it was in one of Martin's videos where he mentioned that his mom was coming to the New York Pro to see him compete. He also mentioned that his mother does not attend bodybuilding shows often, but when somebody is performing, it doesn't matter if they're a bodybuilder or an actor at a play. If they are on stage and they're looking at the crowd, having a family member there to not only watch them, but support them, their presence alone gives a massive boost to your morale. Even more so if you're a bodybuilder because you're depleted and you're at your wit's end due to peaking. And it really does become the little things that just bring everything together. For example, Chris Bumstead. When Chris Bumstead competes, his family is there in the audience. He feels that if he gave any less than his best performance, he would be letting the people in the crowd, his family in specific, down as a result. And it motivates him that much harder on that stage. The same thing with Martin. If Martin knows consciously that his mother is there sitting in the bleachers watching him, mentally he knows that I have to put on a good show for my mom, dude. I want to make her proud. And honestly, Martin's mother should be proud because before the New York Pro happened, we did get ahead of ourselves there. The Detroit Pro happened where everyone was clamoring over Good Vito since he recently competed at the Arnold Classic Brazil. During that brief time, Good Vito was the talk of the town. Yes, Rafa competed, but we already saw him compete prior in the Arnold Classic Ohio. Another notable bodybuilder that was also there was Tony O'Burton, but we've already seen him compete before plenty of times. We wanted to see Good Vito, this new up-and-coming bodybuilder, who seemingly had endless potential and was set to compete at the Detroit Pro, where he and Martin were going to face off with each other. All the hype behind Vito was almost instantaneously ended because Martin put a stop to that hype and unexpectedly snatched it from underneath him. And that was done by showing in crisp, complete, and by exposing Vito's weaknesses further with those two aspects about his physique and what he wanted to occur at the 2022 Texas Pro came to fruition here at the 2024 Detroit Pro. The fan base had no choice but to recognize Martin, and many were fans again. And so the question was Martin still this immature bodybuilder who can't handle himself? And that question question was answered by simply observing Martin's newfound demeanor. He seems more mature. He seems more relaxed. The things that bothered him before are things that he deflects off of him. And I think his sense of humor plays into that as well. He knows how to take a joke better now. He doesn't take everything too seriously. And that usually only comes with having peace internally as a person. And so Martin now exudes this calm aura. Following the Detroit Pro, the Pittsburgh guest posing occurred. And when you looked at Martin in the lineup, he fared pretty well in terms of size next to top Olympians. There, he actually exposed Nick Walker's waist well before the actual New York Pro. And it wasn't just the waist that Martin exposed, because Martin has another strong body part, since he also exposed Nick in the leg sweep aspect about his physique. Martin has these incredible sweeps, whereas Nick Walker does not. And after that Pittsburgh guest posing, every bodybuilding fan knew that Nick was no longer set to dominate, and it would be a way closer call than most of us had expected. Fast forward in time again. The date of the New York Pro finally arrived, and after the mandatories were set and done, after the awards were dealt to the competitors, Martin Fitzwater came second to Nick by only 2 points. A 2-point difference. A 2-point difference is nothing to scoff at, because some years ago, people were saying that Martin was never going to come close to Nick Walker, that he would never be a top 6 Olympian in his life. He's just this third-rate bodybuilder. But those people have all been silenced by Martin Fitzwater. As Martin was improving his mental stability, he didn't neglect his body. He improved his physique in tandem with his character. It's an incredible thing when someone could turn their naysayers into supporters. The attitude for Martin Fitzwater has completely shifted, and he could proudly say that it was earned. He is continuously refining his life. Presently, he signed a multiple-year contract with Hostile. And because of that, the push and the marketing for Martin Fitzwater is only going to be enhanced from here on out. He was already doing a good job on social media, Instagram, YouTube, but now that he's going to be segmented on one of the largest bodybuilding channels there is, Martin is only going to be trending from here on out, especially come Olympia weekend, where he is eager to prove himself as a top Olympian right off the bat. Martin Fitzwater has been winning left and right, and even though he didn't technically win at the New York Pro, he still took another second place like he did a couple of years ago. It wasn't the placing he was aiming for, but he didn't take to social media to demean anyone this time. This new Martin seems to be refraining from drama. The real test for Martin is when he isn't cast under the limelight, and his emotions are being tried again under the scrutiny from people. That position could easily make someone relapse. I do hope his mind is better fortified, because it's bound to happen to anyone who is a public figure. With that being said, I can't wait to see Martin at the Olympia, and I'm really hopeful about his bodybuilding career. I will be discussing more about Martin leading up to the Mr. Olympia. If you're at all interested in those types of discussions, then I would suggest you subscribe for regular bodybuilding content. I'll catch you guys on the next one.